Oxygen, new film available on Netflix starring Melanie Laurent. It's very evidently a product of the COVID pandemic. It essentially only has Melanie in the central role as the only actress. Then there's another character like briefly shown on screen a couple of times in person and a couple of voice performances on top of that. The central premise is that Melanie wakes up in this weird sort of cocoon slash suit, completely disoriented in darkness, not knowing what's going on. She's strapped into a bed of sorts, which itself is locked inside of a pod, like a more spacious coffin. She has some IVs put into her veins, there are screens lighting up around her. Soon, a voice assistant speaks up to explain some of what's going on. And apparently, she's been cryogenically frozen in this medical pod, and due to a malfunction, she was woken up prematurely by the machines. Now, she has to figure out a way to escape because the oxygen is running out. At the beginning of the film, the reserve levels are only at 34%. And to top it all off, she cannot even remember how she got there and even who she actually is. She seems to have a complete amnesia. So it's this tight, claustrophobic film that tries to build tension using a limited space and limited time frame, with the occasional use of flashbacks where the character tries to remember her past. Now, with movies like these, I always feel like their success rests on two fundamental things. First of all, the central performance. Since we basically spend the entire time with one actor or actress, they need to be convincing and carry the movie on their shoulders. I feel like this part works somewhat in Oxygen. Melanie Laurent was good, but not spectacular. I found her, believable and convincing, but again, it wasn't something that really wowed me, so it's fine. The second key aspect is the story. We're operating on a very singular premise which carries the risk of running out of steam fast, so there needs to be something behind it. Either the central mystery has to unfold in interesting ways, plot twists, details of the plot which are engaging, or it should carry some sort of philosophical dilemma for the character as a result of a predicament. Unfortunately, the movie fails spectacularly at both of those things. The story, as it expands, gets more and more nonsensical to the point that I was straight up angry when the movie finished. The mechanics of the plot just don't make any sense whatsoever when you examine them, and it makes it difficult to keep being invested. There are moments in the film where a reveal happens, okay? I won't say any details so as not to spoil it for anybody that still wants to watch it. And instantly, that new reveal means that one of the key things that happened before is suddenly rendered illogical. Even if previously it made sense within the context of the story, the new information revealed suddenly makes it so that that previous thing now has zero basis in reality. It just shouldn't have happened. And this happens like multiple times where a reveal means that something previously done suddenly doesn't make sense anymore. I don't know if the writers themselves were so lazy that they didn't pay attention or they just hoped we wouldn't notice as the audience. Well, I certainly did. And even without, trying to spot those plot details, the central plot device is the oxygen running out, okay? Well, there's zero consistency in the clock that it provides. There are moments where in the span of like 1 minute, the supply goes down by like 8% or something ridiculous. And even the character is shocked, why is it going down so fast? But then there are also times when it slows down. And there doesn't seem to be any discernible reason for those differences in the tempo. The biggest offense is towards the end of the movie where we reach 5% and these alarms start blaring and so on, and we think, okay, so this is it, this is like the ending sequence, and then about 10 more minutes pass before it drops down again to 4%. It's incredibly infuriating because if it was at least somewhat consistent, we as the audience would learn and have a better idea of how much time is left for the character based on the percentages, and therefore we would be better informed how tense the situation is actually. I mean, when we know it's the final like 5 minutes or so, do or die, it does become gripping. But it's just so wildly unpredictable that you don't know. You can't put a timer on this number. And therefore the tension is just gone completely because I was not stressed at all because it seemed that none of that time pressure matters if it suddenly can stretch to however long the writers want. So purely technically speaking, the writing and the mechanics of the plot are just dog shit, and it takes you right out of the movie multiple times. I thought maybe at least it would become this interesting philosophical piece because it puts a character in a tough situation, and as time goes on it does become more and more hopeless and pessimistic, nihilistic even, and then it seems to go towards the idea of accepting the inevitability of death, of grappling with the fact that you just have to go, of presenting this position that maybe individual life is also not that important in this particular scenario, and that if there literally is no way out, maybe you should just consider giving up and going gracefully. But then, as the climax happens, the movie just reverses that stance and goes in a completely different direction. So it means that it's setting up this dilemma and leading us towards the one inevitable conclusion, only to drop that at the end for a much cheaper ending. So I'm just really, really disappointed in it. I didn't have huge expectations towards the film, and it managed to let down even the ones that I did have. As much as Melanie Laurent is trying her best, she is dragged down by nonsensical writing and poorly executed themes. And perhaps worst of all, the movie is kind of boring. There were stretches of time where I found myself not caring at all about what was going on, which is a huge sin for a movie that's literally built on a tense and engaging situation. As it stands, the one emotion that it consistently managed to evoke in me was the anger at how bad it ended up being. So save yourself some time, stay away from this one.